Good morning, welcome to Magic Modena. I'm putting a video together, it's 13-14 minutes. I'm talking about the costs of ownership of the 360. Just highlighting some of the areas where I've invested, I guess, when I didn't necessarily need to fix things I have, and some of the more unexpected costs that have come about. So I know it's a big question for people who are potentially moving from more sort of day-to-day reliable cars to something a little bit more exotic, as they say, and many people worry about what the costs are. So hope you like it. I think we'll quieten that down if we're going to do this segment today on cost of ownership. So welcome again to Magic Modena. Car that you all recognise probably by now, the Modena 360. This is a 2000 plate. It's done about 27,000 miles, and so today I wanted to talk about that cost of ownership. So I've had it, I do lose track, I think 2 years, 2.5 years maybe, and I had a period of time where I was driving it pretty regularly and everything was fine, and I've also had a few problems, frankly, so I'll sort of dig into some of those. I think the first thing to say is, like, the people often ask about, well, can you afford it, like, how much money do you need, and there's a few videos, Doug Monroe and all those American guys that on the whole say, yeah, don't worry about it, it's fine. I would say, my first thing to say is, and it is a bit of a cliche I think by now, but they do need driving. They really do need to be driven, and the more you drive them, probably the less likely you are to have trouble. And the reason I say that, and I'll give you a couple of examples, a couple of things that have gone wrong for me, and not really about costs, but just a couple of things that have gone wrong for me, is things like coolant leaks and a couple of other leaks, and they've all been because the car sat through the winter and that kind of thing. The seals dry up, nothing's pumping around the mechanics, and you all know with like rubber hoses and all these things, they dry up and then they crack, and then of course you jump back in the car months later and put sort of pressure through all these cracked hoses, and surprise surprise, something leaks. So driving is good. I'm the same as everyone else probably. I'm not someone who's going to drive it out in the slush and the snow and whatever. So yeah, in the winter I'll pop it away for a few months, 2 or 3 months. But outside of that, I try and drive it, every few weeks, every couple of weeks. And when I do drive it, I make sure I drive it for a decent period of time. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say about cost of ownership of these things is, like, I actually think if you're buying one of these cars, you're probably pretty fine with how much the service costs. Even the worst, right? Even if every few years, 2 or 3 years, you get hit with a few £1,000 bill, you're probably mentally prepared for that in some shape or form. And as ever, depending on where you go to get these things done, it can cost more or less. The thing with this type of car, though, is it can unearth other things that they're not big on the surface, but by the time they've been investigated, by the time I've replaced a couple of parts, and one of the most common things that will get said by mechanics, and this isn't about trusting them or not, it's just they're being sensible, is like, well, I've taken off this part or that part in the engine, and I've seen that these things look a bit corroded, or that looks like it needs replacing. We may as well do it while we're working on this. Which is, actually, with the guys I work with, I believe that. I do feel like that is an honest commentary, and you do tend to do it. So suddenly something that would maybe cost £300 or £500 is suddenly costing you 2,000 because they've, you decide to do a few other things. So like, again, it's quite hard when you know the engine's been taken apart and there's a few other things they could fix while it's there. It's quite hard to say no to that if you want to look after your car. I've definitely found it hard to say no to. So that's the other scenario that I think things start to add up that maybe are kind of unexpected. You can obviously ignore them and not do them. I on this took a different approach when I bought it. I put it into the garage and I said to them, can you give it a once over and can you give me the long list of everything that needs replacing? So everything that you can see is wrong, everything that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to break today, but probably something will happen in the next year or 18 months. Give me that long list and then let me have a look at prioritizing that. So I did that, and a bit like the previous scenario, when you see the list, you could ignore many of the things, but it's sort of tempting to think, well, if it's in the garage, let's go for it, let's do it. So I did that. They came up with a list of about 35 different things. It added up to about £15,000 of work, which obviously sounds incredibly scary for anyone who's buying these things on a budget, and it was for me too. So I just prioritized it. I prioritized it into what definitely needs to be done now, what should be done if you've got the money, then probably worth doing it, and then frankly nothing, it's going to go for another 2 years before you've got to worry about it. So that's exactly what we did. We prioritized that list, and very transparent about certain situations where a hill engineering part would be much better than going to the factory. Well, A, because it's actually a better part, and B, because it costs a lot less. I think that is something for new Ferrari owners. They start discovering things like hill engineering that make often better quality parts of Ferrari parts for different things all over the car, and it's quite a good find, frankly, because there's a certain amount of things that the cost OEM parts are just crazy, so, and often less good. So that's what I did, and I brought the cost down. I'm not going to say exactly how much I spent because it was a discretionary, it was my choice to do it. But I spent a lot of money, and the view being that all these things would have gone wrong over time, so I may as well just hit it hard once and and then try and look after it and maintain it in the normal fashion going on from there. So again, something to think about, like if you want to fix things or not fix things, if you want to let them go one at a time. I personally I don't like the stress of some light's gone on, I've got to get it back in the garage, all of that. It's just not something I like. So that's what I did. So that was quite a big upfront cost. Nothing has actually, apart from a coolant leak, nothing has actually gone wrong on the car in my ownership. So, I think that's a good sign, right? I think that's what people want to hear. Everything that I've spent money on, I've kind of chosen to spend money on, except that coolant leak. But that coolant leak was a great example of when I put it in and a lot of other things sort of came out. Things like not gaskets, sort of rubber seals, and other things that were spotted while they're in there. I changed a few of those. So the bill for that definitely went up a bit more. But again, I'm planning to have this car for the long term, and I feel like investing in it is better than trying to do the minimum every time. So that's what I did. One of the most unexpected costs, and again, if you research the Modenas, you read about this stuff, maybe Ferraris in general, but one of the most expensive unexpected costs was when it was in a garage JV London where I bought it, which I'm sorry to say I wouldn't recommend to anyone. They let it go flat in there and must have jump started it, which first of all, you know, that is the sort of 101 of what not to do with these cars. But anyway, it created a little issue with the dash. It swapped from miles to kilometers, and then later this big red cross came up on the dash, and I basically had to have it diagnosed. That, you know, again, there are people that will offer you, oh, we can reprogram this and we can do all this stuff, but the bottom line was, after a lot of research, was you basically need a new dash, you know, where the speedo and everything is. So that's what I did. I sent it off to Italy, and had it all sorted out, and you know, and that came to, I think, 2,500, which came from nowhere, was unexpected. And so, you know, this is what I mean about, yes, you can pick a, you know, okay state Modena up for, I don't know what they are, 55. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of underlying things hidden at that price, but an F1 at 55, 60, and maybe you can afford that, and maybe you can afford the monthly payments, and maybe you can afford a certain amount of wear and tear, but just occasionally you're going to get hit by something, and you've got to be ready for that. So that was like just an unexpected thing. But other than that, I have to say it's run really well. Look, if I have a standard service and a standard oil change and all those things, I'm like, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. I think you just got to be wary of. You got to be wary of the other things that you want, and it's also about like how long you're going to have it, how much do you want to invest in it. I did a big detailing on it at the start, just to kind of level set it. I mentioned in a previous video, so yeah, I did that for kind of top to tail. It was in for a week, and again, that wasn't cheap, but I see these things as investing in a pastime, you know, long-term pastime. I hope to have this for many, many years. So other than that, you know, it's been great. I'm not even going to complain about the petrol. I think it's I think it's good, and I think it, you know, a lot of people talk about these machines like they're human. I think they want to be driven. You know, you don't have to put 10,000 miles a year on it, but I think they need to be driven, you know, every few weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, every week even for some. And personally, I don't like to drive it for less than half an hour, 40 minutes probably, to make sure I feel like it's had a proper run and everything's had a chance to settle in. So there we go. That's my view. I haven't really done anything. I've been sort of voluntarily putting it in the garage to do all these work, so I can't like point to a specific, oh, this is how much the service cost, and because I mixed up loads of other things. But you know, get out there, drive it, enjoy it, and I actually think in the long run it'll probably save you maintenance. So thank you for listening. This is Magic Modena. It's been a pleasure, and see you on the next video.